I've reacted to lists where Rolling Stone, for example, ranks their top 100 or 250 guitarists I think they're up to at this point, but there's never been a nationality-focused list that I've really concentrated on, and I've seen this one enough across my feed.
Hang on, this image is terrible. That's better.
I mean, I am American, but as somebody whose bloodstream is 73% string noise, I figured I had to chime in. It got me wondering who actually is from the UK. This is an interesting list to try and make, and I don't think really anyone's done it. Of course they have, but I haven't. I'll go through the list and acknowledge what makes these guitar players great before disassembling it and removing 4 guitar players. Why 4? Well, because it's my list and I want to, and this one feels like it was made by Classic Rock Dads Weekly. So grab your tepid tea and scrumpets and strumpets? What was that one?
If I know her as well as I think I do, she'll invite us right in for tea and strumpets.
Ritchie Blackmore is first on the list, and he's born in Weston-super-Mare, which sounds like a medieval town where you summon guitar demons. Blackmore had a big fingerprint on the heavy riffs happening in the 60s and 70s, playing with bands like Deep Purple and Rainbow. He combined the sound of a classical sounding scale like harmonic minor with bluesy scales like minor pentatonic. Paving the way for shredders like Joe Satriani to rip through arpeggios at light speed later on. And Joe Satriani actually called him a genius, and he doesn't even know how good he is. Really kind words from Joe Satriani. If only I could say the same about Ritchie Blackmore, who insulted Joe Satriani because he was intimidated by how good Joe Satriani was.
With Joe Satriani, he's a very polished player, almost too polished. That's what worries me sometimes. You just run up and down the fingerboard, that's wonderful, very fast. Really all that means is I've just practiced the hell out of the guitar.
That's like saying you're the fattest, ugliest, horse-looking person I've ever seen. But you're really nice.
So while Ritchie Blackmore will remain on the list, it's at my own begrudgingness. But Ritchie Blackmore obviously gives off the I don't need your compliments, I have dragons to summon with my guitar energy. Next on our list is Jeff Beck. Definitely deserves to be on this list, no surprise there. Born in Wallington, not to be confused with Wellington, which I don't know if that's where Beef Wellington came. I don't even know what Beef Wellington is. But no matter where he's from, Jeff Beck was a guitar whisperer. You know there's horse whisperers, those people who can just tame horses that are wild? Well, that's what Jeff Beck could do. Any guitar, it didn't matter, it sounded like him, and he could weave through genres with ease. Every phase of his musicianship was masterclass level. Your favorite guitar player's favorite guitar player is probably Jeff Beck. I mean, Eric Clapton said he was the greatest guitar player on earth. That's like Batman saying you're pretty good with gadgets. The way he used his whammy bar as a vocalization effect was very forward-thinking, but his overall feel and intonation and musical choices, Jeff Beck absolutely deserves to be on this list. Next on our list, Jimmy Page, who was born in Heston in the UK. I've never been to Heston, but I like saying
Heston.
But what can you say about Jimmy Page? He absolutely deserves to be on this list. Whether it's violin bows, open tunings, or reverse delays, this guy had everything in his magic knapsack. Joe Perry of Aerosmith called Jimmy Page the most important guitarist producer of the entire classic rock era, which is high praise. That's essentially saying this guy created everything that you air guitar in the mirror to. Next on the list, Tony Iommi. From Birmingham, and that's in Birmingham, the UK, not Birmingham, Alabama, where I was saved as a baby from cardiovascular failure. Birmingham, the UK, where the clouds are shaped like guitars and most babies are probably given an SG at birth. Tony Iommi turned an industrial tragedy into a tone triumph when he lost a few of his fingertips in an accident at work. Without Tony Iommi, metal wouldn't exist. That's what James Hetfield said. James Hetfield, that's like saying Thor said this guy invented the hammer. Next on the list, Eric Clapton, nicknamed Slowhand or God. That should just, I guess, get him on the list right then and there. But he's from a place called Surrey? What was it called? Ripley? Surrey? Somebody check me on that. And Eric Clapton played a note. It was the most beautiful note that then started crying. And then Clapton would give that note a hug. And then he would just leave. And the note's left there like, huh? Eric Clapton went from the Yardbirds to Cream to his solo superstardom, all while managing to look mildly annoyed the entire time. B.B. King was on record saying that Eric Clapton's notes had real soul. And that's blues speak for this guy gets it. Up next on the list we have Mark Knopfler, Dire Straits maestro from Glasgow. If you hand Mark Knopfler a pick, he goes like this. because he doesn't use them. Maybe it's just me, but every time Mark Knopfler plays, I feel like it's somebody handing me a blues record, wrapping it in velvet, spinning it through a jazz turbine. Blend of jazz, blues, but it's so silky and nice. John Mayer summed it up perfectly when he said Mark Knopfler can make one guitar sound like three. Up next, David Gilmour, a slam dunk if I say so myself, from Cambridge, a place where the finest exports are David Gilmour, Existential Crises, and Moody Architecture. Steve Vai said that David Gilmour's bends are better than most entire solos, which sounds a little hyperbolic until you actually just sit down and listen and immerse yourself in David Gilmour's guitar playing. Those bends are quite nice. Next on the list is Brian May. He's one part guitarist, one part astrophysicist, full part legend. How many guitar players can you say their harmonized solos sound like space operas written by rock angels? I'm gonna quote Steve Vai again because I love that guy. He said Brian May's solos are symphonic. And I say that his solos are proof that rock gods walk among us, and some of them have PhDs. All right, time to ruffle some feathers. We're taking Pete Townshend off the list. I mean, it's not that he doesn't belong. I'm sure he might fit on somebody's list here and there. And, you know, the windmill, destroying instruments, the whole nine, I get it. He's come up with some great parts over the years, but let's be honest. Without the onstage antics, would we still be talking about Pete Townshend's guitar playing the same way? Would we? Think about it! And replacing him with Saul Hudson, aka Slash, well, that's an easy choice. How is Slash not on this list? Slash is the most famous guitar player out of all these guys. But we're talking about greatest, and famous does involve greatness, so Pete Townshend is clearly one of the most famous guitar players ever. So my list criteria is starting to get personal. I prefer Slash over Pete Townshend 8 days a week. So here's where we replace another one. Paul Kossoff. Can't say I was influenced by him, and that is solely responsible for this ranking. Please don't hate me if he's your favorite guitar player. We're booting him off, and we are popping on. There's no Beatle guitar. I know that maybe you don't like their guitar playing, whatever. You don't think of guitar when you think of the Beatles, you think of the songwriting. But George Harrison not being on the greatest UK guitarist list, he was the guitar player in the greatest UK band, arguably. The song Something has one of the most beautifully economical guitar solos of all time. But the songwriting, the overall sensation that he brought to the band, which then brought to the universe. I mean, George Harrison is severely underrated. The next guitarist on the list is Alvin Lee, and this pains me to do it because I love Alvin Lee, but you're gone, Alvin Lee, for somebody who's more influential to me. And actually, before I get to that guitar player, I want to let you know that Guitar Super System is on sale for just $5 to sign up today. Link in the description. Also, I want to let you know that I love Alvin Lee. His solo in 10 Years After song, I'd Love to Change the World. That was like an iconic, memorable moment when I heard that, even before I played guitar, and I always knew if I ever learn to play guitar, I'm gonna learn that. I love that solo. I think I might know it by heart without ever learning it. Even in the local grocery shop, Alvin Lee is the best. What am I doing? So maybe it's a travesty that I'm kicking Alvin Lee off this list, but born in Oxford, was probably building his pedal board before he came out of the womb. It's Johnny Greenwood of Radiohead. The greatest band in the world, as far as I'm concerned. Johnny Greenwood is like if you rolled Jeff Beck, a haunted church organ, and an anxiety spiral all into one ball and made it a man who could play guitar. That's Johnny Greenwood. I'm sorry to Alvin Lee to remove him from this list. Can we make it a top 13 guitarists? No? Unlucky? All right, 12. Johnny Greenwood's the best. And finally, the most controversial swap, at least that's what I'm anticipating, Peter Frampton is on the list. Now, I understand there's a gap in my musical appreciation. We can't have all heard everything. Peter Frampton, I understand, so many sources have cited him as a pioneer, a legend, a historic figure in guitar culture. But I'm in guitar culture. I've been in it for a long time now. I've never gotten that feeling from him. Maybe I'm just off by a generation, but I like a lot of guys from older generations. Why hasn't Frampton translated through with all those others? So for that reason and that reason alone, I don't really feel bad about booting Peter Frampton off this list, even though I will appreciate the fact that I'm most likely wrong. But how could I be wrong when the guy I'm putting on the list is the greatest guitar player to possibly ever pick up a guitar? And I'm not talking about Jimi Hendrix, I'm not talking about Eddie Van Halen, I'm not talking about Yngwie Malmsteen, I'm not talking about Steve Vai, I'm not talking about Joe Satriani, I'm not talking about Eric Johnson, I'm not talking about anybody who you think I am, unless you said the name Guthrie Govan, baby. If you don't know who Guthrie Govan is, well, you probably haven't made it this far in this video. But if you do know who he is, then you're probably nodding your head. Yeah, he had to do it. He had to do it. Guthrie can do it all. Plays with Hans Zimmer now, the greatest film composer of all time. And he can also pick up the guitar and make any guitarist question their entire life existence. Look, Frampton, Alvin Lee, and all the guys on the list and people I put on, they all talk with their guitars. Guthrie Govan speaks in 12 different dialects in 46 languages. All right, there you have it, the UK's greatest guitarists, the top 12. Did I get it right? Well, maybe, but maybe not. I understand if you think I'm wrong. Leave a comment and let me know. I don't know, these lists, I think they're dumb too. But it's fun, right? You had a good time watching this video. I get a good joy and kick out of doing this stuff and learning this stuff. It's all in good-natured humility. So I hope you don't think that I'm insulting any of the guitar players on this list. And I really appreciate your support and for watching. And until next time, keep shredding.